Welcome to the TOEFL Listening section. In this part, you will hear one or more conversations in an academic or campus context, such as a discussion between a student and a professor or between two students. You may take notes while listening. Listen to part of a conversation. You will hear it only once, so listen carefully. After the conversation, you will answer questions about what you heard. Some questions will ask you about main ideas and details. Others will ask about implied meaning, speaker attitude, or how ideas relate to one another. Use both what is stated and what is implied to answer.
Hi, Professor Martinez. Thanks for meeting with me during office hours to talk about restorative justice programs.
Of course, Jacob, I am glad you are focusing on restorative justice for your paper. Tell me what you understand so far.
I know restorative justice focuses on repairing harm rather than only punishing offenders. But I want to be precise about the different program models and their outcomes.
Good. Restorative justice programs typically involve stakeholders, meaning victims, offenders, and community members work together to address the harm. Common models include victim-offender mediation, family group conferencing, and community restorative circles.
Could you explain family group conferencing a bit more with an example?
Sure. Family group conferencing originated in New Zealand with Maori practices and the juvenile justice system. In those conferences, family members, the victim, and professionals meet to develop a plan for restitution and reintegration. The emphasis is on collective responsibility and culturally appropriate processes.
So that is different from a formal court hearing because it is less adversarial and more collaborative.
Exactly. It reduces legal formalities and creates a space for dialogue. Another example is victim-offender dialogue in Canada, where carefully facilitated meetings allow victims to ask questions and receive apologies if they want that.
What does the research say about outcomes like recidivism and victim satisfaction?
Research shows mixed but promising results. Several randomized controlled trials and longitudinal studies find lower reoffending rates among participants compared with similar offenders who went through conventional processing. Equally important, victims often report higher satisfaction and a greater sense of closure when they participate voluntarily.
You mentioned voluntariness. How important is it that participation is voluntary?
It is critical. Participation must be voluntary for both victims and offenders. Coerced involvement can produce false confessions, increase harm, and undermine legitimacy of the process.
Is that why some programs screen cases carefully?
Yes. Effective restorative justice programs have intake procedures to assess safety, power dynamics, and the willingness of parties to engage. Cases with ongoing threats or severe power imbalances may be inappropriate for direct mediation.
How do facilitators handle power imbalances when they do proceed?
Skilled facilitators use pre-meeting coaching, separate meetings with each party, and clear ground rules. They also may involve advocates for victims and ensure that cultural and linguistic needs are addressed. Training and supervision of facilitators are essential for ethical practice.
You mentioned cultural needs. Can restorative justice be adapted to different communities effectively?
Yes, with caution. Programs that collaborate with local leaders and integrate indigenous practices tend to be more legitimate and effective. For example, some communities in Canada and Australia incorporate traditional peacemaking rituals and community involvement to strengthen reintegration.
What about legal integration? How do restorative programs fit into formal justice systems?
There are several models. In some jurisdictions, restorative programs operate as diversion from prosecution, meaning successful completion can avoid a criminal record. In others, they operate alongside court sanctions as a complementary pathway. Policy choices affect funding and program design.
Are there clear cost benefits compared to incarceration?
Many evaluations indicate cost savings because restorative processes often require fewer court resources and reduce reoffending, which lowers long-term costs. However, rigorous cost-benefit analysis depends on quality data and consistent follow-up.
What methodological challenges should I note when reviewing studies for my literature review?
Look for selection bias, small sample sizes, and inconsistent outcome measures. High-quality studies use randomized controlled trials or matched comparison groups, and they combine quantitative recidivism data with qualitative interviews to capture victim experiences.
Do you have a case study I could cite that shows both quantitative and qualitative findings?
Yes. There was a study of a juvenile conferencing program that reported a 20% reduction in repeat offending over 2 years, and interviews with victims highlighted improved perceptions of safety and restored trust in community supports. That mixed methods approach is persuasive.
What about criticisms of restorative justice programs?
Criticisms include concerns about unequal bargaining power, the potential for re-victimization if done poorly, and the risk that restorative options might be used to avoid accountability when they are not appropriate. Transparency and monitoring are necessary to address these concerns.
How should policymakers measure success when they implement these programs?
They should use multiple indicators. Recidivism is important, but so are victim satisfaction, compliance with agreements, community reintegration, and cost-effectiveness. Long-term follow-up and independent evaluations are also important.
For my paper, I plan to compare diversion models that use restorative conferencing with standard juvenile court processing and evaluate outcomes with both statistics and interviews. Does that seem reasonable?
Yes, that is a strong approach. Make sure to include ethical considerations and the mechanics of facilitation. Also discuss how to scale up promising programs without losing fidelity to core restorative principles.
Thank you. One more thing, I want to emphasize safeguards in my conclusion.
Good idea. For example, I emphasize that victim participation must always be voluntary to avoid re-traumatization and to respect autonomy.
That line will be useful. I will also recommend training standards and community partnerships as safeguards.
Excellent. Send me a draft and we can discuss sources and how to present the mixed methods evidence clearly.
I will. Thanks again for your time and guidance on restorative justice programs.
You are welcome, Jacob. Good luck with your research.
Listen again to part of the conversation. Then answer the question.
I emphasize that victim participation must always be voluntary to avoid re-traumatization and to respect autonomy.
This concludes the conversation portion. For more TOEFL practice tests and study materials, visit Spinta.org.